Undercover CEO goes to order at his own diner, stops cold when he hears two boys behind him. The bell above the door gave its familiar jingle. As Jack Whitmore stepped into Ellie's diner, the place he'd built from the ground up 22 years ago, he paused just inside the threshold, taking in the warm scent of coffee and bacon, the hum of idle chatter, the clink of plates behind the counter. It looked the same turquoise booths, the same crooked jukebox in the corner, still flashing through old Elvis songs. But something felt off. He tugged the brim of his baseball cap lower, adjusted the collar of his flannel shirt. No one recognized him. Not the new girl at the register. Not the teenager wiping tables with earbuds in. Not the short order cook shouting tickets like he owned the grill. That was the point. He wasn't here as Mr. Whitmore, the founder and CEO. He was just Jack today. Undercover. He had built a chain of 12 diners across the Midwest, each one modeled after the original Ellie's. But this one, the flagship location, the one he was standing in right now, was supposed to be the gold standard. Yet, in the last few months, he'd been hearing whispers, staff turnover, customer complaints, numbers slipping. Now, he was here to see for himself. Jack stepped up to the counter, hands in his jacket pockets, trying to blend in. Then he heard it. Two boys behind him. Their voices were low, but angry. And then, one name stopped him cold. Whitmore, one of them said. That bastard doesn't care about people like us. Jack froze, the name still hanging in the air like the aftershock of a slap. That bastard doesn't care about people like us. The first boy muttered again, bitterness sharp in his young voice. Jack shifted slightly, keeping his head down, pretending to glance at the menu posted above the counter. In the reflection of the glass display case, he caught a glimpse of the two teens behind him. One wore a battered army surplus jacket. The other had a mop of curly blonde hair, and a face far too young to carry that much anger. He just cuts people loose, the second boy said. Quieter. No warning, just gone. Like they never mattered. Jack's jaw tightened. You really think he gives a damn about this place? About your dad? The first one scoffed. All he cares about is expanding to Chicago and counting his profits. Jack's chest tightened. They were talking about him, and not in the vague, abstract way customers sometimes did. This was personal. Someone's father. A life disrupted by a decision he made. Table 7, your pancakes are up, barked the cook behind the counter, snapping Jack out of the spiral. But the voices behind him kept coming. Your dad was the best manager they ever had, the blonde one said. My mom said so. Said when he was running the place. People smiled more. She said, he remembered customers' birthdays. That he helped her get through last winter, when she couldn't pay her gas bill. Jack's stomach dropped. The first boy sighed. And now he's stocking shelves at the grocery store, pretending it's all fine. But it's not. You know it's not. Oh, isn't? Jack turned slowly, pretending to look for a seat. The boys didn't even notice him. They were too wrapped up in the gravity of what they were saying, leaning over half-drunk cups of hot chocolate. In the back booth. You should talk to him, the first boy said. Make him fight for his job. The second one shook his head. He won't. Says the new manager's tight with corporate. Says there's no point. Jack sat down in a booth nearby, pulse hammering beneath his flannel. The waitress came by, her eyes glossing over him like he was invisible. He mumbled an order he didn't even register. Eggs. Maybe coffee. And waved her off. He couldn't stop thinking about what he'd just heard. Someone, some former manager, had been let go. And if Jack was hearing this right, it hadn't been clean. It hadn't been right. Was this one of the layoffs he'd signed off on last year? Corporate had assured him it was necessary. Streamlining, they'd said. Performance reviews. Restructuring. But this wasn't a number on a spreadsheet. This was a man. With a son. Jack leaned back. Heart heavy. Eyes scanning the diner. He used to know every corner of this place. Every face. Now, it felt like a stranger's home. And he didn't know where the rot had started. But one thing was certain. He was going to find out. Jack waited, watching from his booth, as the two boys slipped out of the diner, hoods up against the drizzle outside. He caught the tail end of their conversation. Something about heading to the grocery store. to help someone restock. The pieces were falling into place. As the door shut behind them, Jack left a few bills on the table and slid out of his booth. He hadn't eaten a bite. His appetite was gone. Back in his car, he pulled his phone from the glove box and opened the employee directory. He tapped through the names, past and present managers, of the original Ellie's Diner. Then he saw it. Michael Carson, General Manager, terminated. The 14th of June. The name hit Jack like a gut punch. Michael Carson. Of course, Jack remembered hiring him personally. 15 years ago, when Ellie's had its first big expansion. Mike was one of those rare types. Loyal, hardworking, all heart. He used to crack jokes in the break room, knew every staff member's birthday. Back when the diner had its soul, Mike had been a big part of it. Jack remembered the handwritten notes in the margins of training manuals, the way customers would ask for him by name. He'd once stayed overnight in the diner, during a snowstorm, just to make sure the morning shift could open on time. And now, he was restocking shelves? What the hell happened? Jack scrolled down. The termination notes were vague. Position eliminated during restructuring. No performance issues. No warnings. Just gone. He called up corporate HR, used his authority code to unlock archived performance files. Mike's record? Spotless. In fact, the last customer feedback audit under his watch had been the highest in the region. Jack's jaw clenched. Someone had gotten rid of him, and Jack hadn't even noticed. It all came back to that quarterly meeting in May. Corporate had pitched a plan to trim inefficiencies before pushing into new markets. They'd thrown around numbers, stats, jargon. He'd signed off, barely listening, thinking more about expansion than about the people who'd gotten him there. Jack's chest tightened. Mike had been collateral damage in a decision Jack barely remembered making, but he remembered now, and he knew what he had to do next. Jack parked across the street from Miller's Market, the local grocery store, 2 blocks from the diner. He waited. Minutes passed, and then he saw him. Michael Carson, grayer than Jack remembered, maybe a little stooped, but unmistakable. He wheeled a cart of produce through the sliding doors. He wore a red apron. His name tag said Mike. It didn't say manager, didn't say anything about the man he used to be. But what struck Jack hardest wasn't the job or the uniform. It was the way Mike carried himself. Quiet, a little smaller, like life had taken something out of him, like he was trying not to be noticed. Jack sat back in his seat, heart heavy. This wasn't just a mistake. This was a man who had given everything and had been quietly discarded, like he didn't matter. And the worst part? Jack hadn't even known it happened, but he knew now, and he wasn't going to look away. Jack didn't sleep that night. The image of Mike, pushing a cart of bananas through the aisles, replayed in his mind like a movie scene on loop. The man who used to run Ellie's flagship diner like a symphony, now wore a faded red apron, and kept his eyes low, to avoid attention. By morning, Jack had made up his mind. He drove back to Miller's Market. This time, with purpose. He waited near the side entrance, knowing the early shift came in through there. Sure enough, just after 6, 3 m. Centered. Mike appeared, hood up, head down, coffee in one hand, lunchbox in the other. Jack stepped forward. Mike? Mike paused mid-step. His eyes lifted, squinting against the morning light. And for a second, there was no recognition. Then he blinked. The coffee cup trembled slightly in his hand. Jack? He said slowly. Whitmore? Yeah, Jack replied, suddenly feeling smaller than he had in years. Two need to talk to you. Mike stared at him. Then, in a quiet, firm voice. Why? Jack hesitated. I was at the diner yesterday. I overheard some things I didn't know, about what happened to you, about how you were let go. Mike let out a bitter breath, half a laugh. Now you hear about it? He turned to go. Jack stepped in his path. Please, just give me 5 minutes. Mike stared hard at him, eyes clouded with something deeper than anger. Hurt. Wounds that hadn't even begun to scab over. Finally, Mike nodded toward the loading dock. 5 minutes. They sat on overturned milk crates, The morning traffic distant. The air heavy with unspoken things. I didn't know, Jack said. I should've. But I didn't. I looked into it last night. You had no write-ups. No issues. You were one of the best we ever had. Mike's jaw tightened. That didn't seem to matter, he said. Got an email on a Friday. Said my position was being phased out. I called. No one answered. The new district manager sent me a severance packet. That was it. Jack looked down, guilt pressing heavy against his ribs. I trusted people to make those calls, he said. And I shouldn't have. I was focused on expansion, on metrics, markets, pushing into new cities. But I stopped paying attention to the heart of the company. To people like you. Mike was silent. Then his voice came, low, steady. I gave 15 years, Jack. Missed Christmases with my kids. Pulled double shifts when the staff was short. I kept that place running, when we had power outages, and burst pipes. And they took it away from me, without a conversation. His voice cracked at the end. He looked away, blinking fast. And my son, he added, softer now. He looked up to me. He thought I mattered. Jack's throat tightened. You did matter, he said, his voice hoarse. You do. But the words hung hollow. Too late. Too shallow. Mike stood, the hurt still deep in his eyes. 5 minutes are up. And with that, he walked back into the store, leaving Jack on the crate, staring at the ground, the weight of 15 years of loyalty lost, echoing in his chest. Jack sat on that overturned milk crate, long after Mike disappeared into the grocery store. A gentle drizzle had begun to fall, but Jack didn't move. He barely noticed. The cold seeped through his jacket, through his bones, through the armor of self-importance he hadn't even realized he'd built around himself all these years. The truth hurt more than he expected. And it wasn't just about Mike. It was about who he had become. There was a time when Jack knew every employee's name, every dishwasher's story, every busser's birthday. The early years of Ellie's had been built on handshakes and second chances, on humanity. He'd made his name by being the CEO who still cleaned tables, the leader who listened. But somewhere along the line, he'd let it all slip away. He thought back to the conference room last spring, fluorescent lights buzzing overhead, a dozen people in suits, clicking through PowerPoints. One of the slides had said, Cost, Saving Opportunities, Labor Restructuring Midwest Division. He hadn't even asked who that included. He was already thinking about the Chicago launch. Mike had been a casualty of Jack's blind ambition. Jack raked his hands through his damp hair. His mind went back to the way Mike had spoken, with quiet devastation, not rage. That kind of pain didn't come from losing a job. It came from losing dignity, from being discarded by someone you once trusted. And then, his son. Jack clenched his fists. The blonde-haired boy from the diner. That had to be Mike's kid. Jack thought about the boy's words. He won't fight. Says, there's no point. How could he believe there was a point? When Jack, the very man who built the company, hadn't even known what had happened? And suddenly, Jack saw it all, with painful clarity. Ellie's diner had become everything he swore it never would. A heartless machine. Somewhere along the way, he'd traded compassion for expansion, soul for scalability. He remembered the day Mike started. Fresh-faced, sleeves rolled up, calling everyone, buddy. The company holiday party in 2012, when Mike dressed as Santa, just to make the dishwasher's little girl smile. The time he stayed behind after a flood, mopping floors until 3 a.m., to keep the diner open. Mike was Ellie's, and Jack had erased him, with a signature, on a dotted line. He pressed the heels of his palms into his eyes. But the guilt didn't go away. It grew heavier. He thought of Mike's son, watching his father pretend like it didn't hurt, learning that hard work could be erased overnight. That loyalty didn't mean a damn thing. Jack stood abruptly, as if rising might keep the grief from burying him. He'd scraped up badly, but he wasn't going to let that be the end of the story. He couldn't undo the past, but maybe, just maybe, he could try to fix what he broke. He headed back to his car, drenched and shaking. This wasn't about PR. It wasn't about the brand. It was about one man's dignity, one family's faith, And the question pounding in Jack's chest was simple, searing, and inescapable. What kind of man do I want to be now? 2 days later, Jack stood outside Mike Carson's modest 2-bedroom house, on the edge of town, holding a small envelope, and his breath. The sun was just beginning to set, casting long golden streaks across the front lawn. A rusty bike leaned against the porch railing. A basketball sat in the grass, half deflated. Jack recognized the feeling in his chest. It was the same one he used to get before investor meetings, but this was different. This was personal. He knocked. The door opened a crack, and Mike's son, Jake, if Jack remembered correctly, peeked through. "Hi," Jack said gently. "Is your dad home?" The boy's eyes narrowed. "You're that guy?" "I am." Jack paused, then added, "I owe your dad a big apology." The door shut again. Jack waited. Then, slowly, it creaked open once more. Mike stepped onto the porch. He didn't say anything, just folded his arms. Guarded, Jack offered the envelope. "It's a formal rehire offer," he said. "Full reinstatement, with back pay and benefits. I also added an apology letter, though I doubt it says enough." Mike didn't reach for it. Jack lowered the envelope. "You kept that place alive, longer than any spreadsheet ever could. I didn't see it before. That's on me, but I see it now." Mike's expression was unreadable. "Why now, Jack?" he asked quietly. "Because you overheard something in a booth? Because guilt finally caught up with you?" Jack nodded, slowly. "Yes, I was blind. And I'm sorry." Mike exhaled through his nose, then sat down on the porch step. Jack didn't follow. He stayed standing, like a student facing the principal. "I spent the last few months wondering what I did wrong," Mike said quietly, replaying conversations, questioning everything. "Do you know what it's like? To watch your kid look at you like you failed, when all you ever did was show up." Jack felt a lump rise in his throat. "I think I'm starting to understand." Mike finally looked up, his eyes tired. "Hard? You can't just undo that, Jack. You can't buy it back with a check." "I know," Jack said, "but I had to try. And if you come back, it won't just be to the same place. I'm making changes. Real ones. Starting from the inside." Mike shook his head slowly. "I'm not ready." The words hit harder than Jack expected. "I don't trust that anything would really be different." Mike continued. "I gave everything I had once. It damn near broke me. When it got ripped away." Jack nodded. He had no defense, just the ache of truth in his chest. "I'll leave this here," he said, setting the envelope on the step beside Mike. "If you change your mind, the door's open. Not just to your job, to making it better than it ever was." Mike didn't reply, just stared out at the yard, where his son was now shooting hoops alone, his small form silhouetted against the fading sky. Jack walked away slowly, the crunch of gravel under his boots the only sound. He'd offered his hand. Mike wasn't ready to take it. But Jack wasn't done. Some wounds needed time before they could heal. Jack wasn't going to wait around, hoping Mike changed his mind. He knew what needed to happen, and it started with the place where it all began, Ellie's diner. The next morning, Jack returned. No flannel, no ball cap. He wore a simple button-down and jeans. But no disguise this time. This wasn't a covert mission anymore. This was personal. The diner buzzed, like always. Plates clinking, coffee brewing, chatter echoing off the walls. But as soon as Jack stepped through the door, the hum softened. Recognition rippled through the staff, like a dropped stone in still water. That was Jack Whitmore, the founder. He stepped behind the counter, ignoring the stunned expressions, and grabbed the mic connected to the diner's tiny speaker system. He took a breath. "Can I have everyone's attention, please?" he said, voice clear. Forks paused mid-air. Customers turned. Staff froze. "I'm Jack Whitmore," he continued, "the founder of Ellie's Diner. And I need to say something." The room fell completely silent. "In recent months, we lost our way. I lost my way. I let decisions be made, without understanding who they affected. Good people were hurt. People who gave this place its soul." He swallowed hard. Michael Carson was one of them. The silence deepened. Even the fry cook stopped mid-order. He gave 15 years to this diner. He trained staff, held this place together during hard times. He was family. And I let him go. Without a phone call. Without respect. I failed him. A waitress gasped softly. Jack didn't stop. Starting today, we're changing that. Effective immediately, I'm launching a full review of every recent termination. No more faceless restructuring. Every decision will be tied to values, not just margins. He took a breath. We're creating a new employee committee, made up of servers, cooks, managers, who will help shape company policy. I'm also instating a hardship fund for staff facing crises. And, he added, eyes sweeping the room, all current managers will be reevaluated. Not just on performance, but on how they treat people. A beat. Then, and I'm reinstating Mike Carson's position. Whether he takes it is up to him. But the job, and our respect, are his. The room stayed still for a long, waited moment. Then someone clapped. Another joined. Soon, the diner filled with applause. Not thunderous, but sincere. A cook wiped his eyes. The hostess nodded, stunned but grateful. Afterward, Jack stayed at the diner the entire day. Not as a guest. Not as a CEO. But as a worker. He bussed tables. Poured coffee. Took refills and orders. Saturday with the staff between shifts. And listened. Really listened. He learned that morale had dropped, not just because of lost jobs, but because people had stopped believing they mattered. No one in corporate returned calls. Races had stalled. Break rooms were neglected. Voices were ignored. Jack took notes. Names. Promises. That night, he called every regional manager. Some resisted. He replaced 2 on the spot. The next morning, a video of his diner speech went viral online, shot by a customer who happened to be filming when he started talking. The title read, CEO apologizes publicly for firing beloved manager live from the diner he built. Thousands shared it. But Jack didn't care about going viral. He didn't care about trending. He only cared about one thing, making Ellie's Diner a place worth coming back to. 3 days later, Ellie's Diner was busier than it had been in months. The video of Jack's apology had made the rounds, not just locally, but across the state. Former employees, loyal customers, even reporters, had come out of the woodwork to see what was really happening. Some thought it was a PR stunt. Others hoped it was real. But for Jack, none of that mattered. He was waiting for one person. Late that afternoon, the doorbell jingled. Jack looked up. From the table where he'd been reviewing a fresh stack of employee feedback cards. The din of conversation dulled in his ears as the man stepped through the entrance. Mike Carson, no apron this time, just jeans, a plain button-up shirt, and a guarded expression. Beside him stood his son, Jake, nervous but curious, hands shoved in his hoodie pockets. Jack stood slowly. For a long moment, neither man moved. No one else in the diner seemed to breathe. Then Jack gave a quiet nod. Mike glanced around the diner, taking it all in. The smiles on the servers' faces. The new staff bulletin board. The printed policy updates, pinned to the wall. His eyes lingered on the framed photo. Near the entrance, himself and Jack. From years ago, laughing during a staff picnic. Jack had written it, just that morning. I saw the video, Mike said, voice even. Jack nodded. It was overdue. All of it. I also got calls from 2 former employees. Mike continued. Said you reached out personally, checked in on them, offered rehires. I did, Jack said. I'm trying to fix what I broke. Mike looked at his son, who gave him a small, encouraging nudge. He turned back to Jack. You really changing things? Jack didn't try to convince him. He didn't pitch or plead. He just stepped aside and gestured toward the back of the diner. Come see for yourself. Mike walked past him, slowly, eyes sharp. He moved through the kitchen first, where cooks called out greetings, and old friends clapped him on the shoulder. Then through the office, where a whiteboard listed staff birthdays and time-off requests were now reviewed by a committee. Finally, he came to the break room. Once a grim, cluttered space, it was now freshly painted, clean, stocked with snacks and coffee. Mike stood still for a long moment. He looked back at Jack. It's not the same place, he said quietly. Jack nodded. It's not. But I'm hoping it can be better. There was a pause. Then Mike gave a small smile. Tired. Wary. But real. You still got that offer letter? Jack reached into his back pocket and handed him the envelope. Mike took it, turned it over in his hands. Full reinstatement, Jack said. Or, we create something new. Together. Title, role, vision, your call. Jake stepped forward now. You should do it, Dad. Mike smiled down at him, then looked back at Jack. I'll give it a shot. No promises, but I'll come back. Jack's voice caught in his throat. He extended a hand. Mike hesitated. Then, he took it. Around them, the sounds of the diner returned. Orders called, laughter rising, coffee brewing. But something had shifted. The heart of the place was beating again. Mike returned on a Monday morning. Quietly, without fanfare. Just the way he preferred it. But the moment he walked through the diner doors, wearing a fresh name tag, and a gray Ellie's Diner polo, the room erupted into spontaneous applause. Even the new hires, who didn't know him directly, clapped. They'd heard the stories about the manager, who once brought hot soup to a line cook's sick grandmother, who stayed overnight during a blizzard, so the morning staff could rest. Mike gave a modest wave and ducked behind the counter. Jack watched from a booth, arms folded, a quiet smile tugging at his face. Rebuilding wasn't about flipping a switch. It was about showing up every single day. And Mike did. He didn't just return to his old role. He helped redesign it. With Jack's full blessing, Mike became the Director of Culture and Training, a position that hadn't existed before. His first move? Setting up mentorships between senior and junior staff, giving every new employee someone to rely on. Staff morale began to rise. You could see it in the little things. Servers swapping shifts to help each other. The cook who started a lunch for staff kids' fun jar near the register. The place buzzed with something new. Hope. Jack kept coming in, too. Not as a CEO, but as a worker. He cleared tables, handed out surveys, even helped deep clean the griddle one night. When the team was shorthanded. You missed a spot, Mike joked, handing Jack a sponge. Jack smirked. You mean this spot? They laughed. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like old times. Back when this wasn't just a business, but a second home. Together, they rewrote the company handbook. Gone were the vague, sterile policies. In their place, clear values. Dignity, compassion, communication. Every employee was encouraged to submit ideas. Anonymous, or signed. Every month, 2 were selected and implemented if feasible. One server suggested weekly shift shoutouts, where staff recognized each other's work. It quickly became a highlight. Customers noticed the change, too. I don't know what's different, one elderly regular said one afternoon, sipping her coffee. But this place feels warm again. Like it used to. Word spread. Former employees reached out. Some returning to the fold. Others simply sending thanks. Franchise locations asked for copies of the new training program. Jack started touring them with Mike. Hosting town halls. Not to talk at staff, but to listen. Even Jake, Mike's son, got a weekend job bussing tables. One evening, as the sun dipped low, outside the wide diner windows, Jack and Mike sat in the back booth. Plates cleared. Staff winding down. The warm hum of closing time all around them. They looked out over the place they'd rebuilt. Not just in structure, but in spirit. Jack took a sip of coffee. I thought I was building an empire, he said. But I think I was just trying to find home. Mike nodded, quiet for a moment. You found it, he said. And this time, you didn't do it alone. Jack smiled. Together, they hadn't just revived a diner. They'd reignited its soul. The bell above the door jingled again, like it always did. But this time, it wasn't just a sound, it was a signal. A reminder that second chances can walk through the same door as regret. Jack stood near the jukebox, wiping down a counter, when Jake burst in, wearing his black Ellie's apron and a wide, unstoppable grin. Dad taught me how to take inventory today, he announced to no one in particular, pride swelling in his voice. Mike trailed behind him, smiling quietly, a dish towel slung over his shoulder. He looked around the diner, like a man seeing something sacred. Not because it was flashy or perfect, but because it had been broken and rebuilt with care. Jack watched the two of them, father and son, moving through the space, as if they belonged there, because now, they did. Again, at a corner table, a little girl pointed up at the wall. "Mommy, is that the man in the picture?" Jack turned. The photo she was pointing to showed him and Mike, 15 years younger, arm in arm, at a company barbecue. Laughter, caught in the freeze frame of time. Her mother smiled gently. "Yeah, that's them." Jack felt something catch in his throat. He stepped over, knelt beside the girl, and said softly, "That's what it looks like when people get a second chance." She blinked up at him. "Did you say sorry?" Jack nodded. "I did." She grinned. "Then it's okay." Jack looked back at Mike, who gave a slow nod, wordless, but full of meaning. And in that moment, with the scent of fresh coffee in the air, and laughter echoing off the walls, Jack realized the truth. Some empires are built with brick and steel, but the ones that last? They're built with forgiveness,